My name is Chloe Mitchell. 2 years ago, on a Saturday morning in November, I sat at my kitchen counter in San Francisco, opened the email from a genetic testing company called 23andMe, and discovered that the man I had spent 32 years calling Dad, the man who had taught me how to ride a bike, walked me down the aisle at my wedding, paid for half of my master's degree, was not my biological father. That was the first thing I saw. I scrolled down. The woman I had spent 32 years calling Mom, the one who had nursed me through 7 ear infections in elementary school, sewed my Halloween costumes by hand, sat next to me in a hospital bed when I broke my arm at 12, was not my biological mother either. The little sister I had protected my entire life, the one whose hand I had held on her first day of kindergarten, the one I had picked up from countless college parties, the one whose maid of honor I would be at her wedding in May, was not my biological sister. I sat at that kitchen counter for 2 hours. I did not move. I did not cry. I did not call my husband, who was upstairs in his office on a work call. I just sat there, staring at the screen, watching the same sentence repeat itself in different formats across a dozen browser tabs. 0% DNA match. Predicted relationship. Unrelated. By the end of the next 8 months, I would discover that I had been switched at birth at a hospital in Sacramento on a Tuesday in October of 1993 by a nurse who had documented the mistake the very next morning and a supervising physician who had quietly buried the report instead of contacting the families. By the end of the next 12 months, I would meet my biological parents for the first time. I would meet my biological sister, who had grown up in my family's life, in someone else's house, in someone else's chair, at someone else's Thanksgiving table. And by the end of the next 18 months, I would help engineer the largest hospital misconduct settlement in California state history and end the careers of 2 medical professionals who had spent 32 years pretending nothing had happened. This is the story of how a $49 drugstore DNA kit blew apart 2 families on opposite sides of the same city. My name is Chloe Mitchell, and this is what happens when the truth has been waiting in a filing cabinet for 3 decades, and somebody finally goes looking. Let me tell you who I was. I'm 34 years old now. I work as a senior financial analyst at a fintech company in San Francisco. My husband, his name is Marcus, is a high school history teacher in Oakland. We have no children yet. We live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the Mission District. I grew up in Sacramento. My parents, Robert and Diane Mitchell, lived in the same 4-bedroom suburban house from 1989 until last year. My father was an electrical engineer for the state of California. My mother was a pediatric nurse, and I need you to remember that detail because it matters later. She was a nurse for 36 years. I have a younger sister. Her name is Anna Mitchell. She is 4 years younger than me. She is 29. She works as a graphic designer. She is, by every external standard, the spitting image of my mother. Same blue eyes, same wave in her hair, same crinkle around the eyes when she laughs. I, on the other hand, am 5'10" with straight dark hair and brown eyes the color of strong coffee. I was always the tallest in my family by half a foot. I do not look like my mother. I do not look like my father. I do not look like Anna. For 32 years, the family joke was that I had inherited the genes from the maternal grandmother. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was a tall, dark-haired woman of Polish descent who had died before I was born. There were exactly 3 photos of her in our family albums. In every one of those photos, she was wearing a hat that obscured most of her face. I am going to come back to that detail. We were not a perfect family. I want to say that clearly before I tell you what comes next. My parents had their problems. My mother could be controlling. My father retreated into his garage for whole weekends at a time. Anna and I went through a period in our late teens where we did not speak, but by the time I was 32, by the time I took that DNA test, we had become, finally, a close family. The kind that did Sunday dinners. The kind that texted in a group chat. The kind that planned vacations together. I loved them. I want that on record before I keep going. I loved them, and what I am about to tell you did not, in the end, change that. It changed everything else, but it did not change that. Anna and I took the test together as a joke. It was the Thanksgiving before I turned 33. We were at our parents' house in Sacramento. We had cleared the table. Anna had bought us each a 23andMe kit as a sister bonding Christmas gift, 1 month early. She wanted, she said, to see how much Polish we actually are. My father laughed. He sat at the head of the table drinking coffee, and he said, "You'll find out you're both about 3/4 European mutt. Don't get your hopes up about anything exotic." My mother, and I think about this a lot in hindsight, went quiet. I remember her standing at the sink washing a roasting pan with her back to us. She did not say anything. Anna and I spit into the little tubes. We laughed. We sealed them. Anna mailed them on Monday from her apartment in Oakland. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in early November, I sat down with a cup of coffee, opened the email from 23andMe, and entered the world I am about to describe to you. The first thing the report shows you is your ancestry estimate. Mine was not Polish. It was not European mutt. It was 47% East Asian, 34% South Asian, the remaining 19% split between Indigenous American and a small percentage of European. I read it 3 times. I checked the account I had logged into. It was mine. I checked the email address on the report. It was mine. I scrolled down to the DNA relatives feature. Anna's account was linked to mine. She had set us up as siblings during the registration. I clicked on her profile. The first line of her profile said, Anna Mitchell, predicted relationship, none detected. Shared, DNA 0.0%. I went into my parents' account next. They had both done 23andMe 4 years earlier at my mother's urging. She had wanted to know about her health markers because of a family history of heart disease. My father's profile. Robert Mitchell. Predicted relationship, none detected. Shared DNA, 0.0%. My mother's profile. Diane Mitchell. Predicted. Relationship, none detected. Shared DNA, 0.0%. I sat at that kitchen counter for 2 hours. I did not cry. I did not call Marcus, who was upstairs. I did not text my sister. I opened 12 different browser tabs and I started cross-referencing. Anna's profile, which I could see because she had given me access, showed her as a normal biological match to both Robert and Diane Mitchell. Approximately 50% shared DNA with each. Approximately 25% with our mother's first cousin, who had also taken the test. Anna was their daughter. I was not. The DNA was unambiguous. I needed a second opinion. I ordered 3 more tests from 3 different companies. Ancestry DNA, My Heritage, a forensic grade kit from a private lab. I told Marcus that night. He held me while I shook for an hour. We did not tell my parents. We did not tell Anna. I waited. 6 weeks later, I had 3 more reports. All 3 confirmed the same finding. I was not the biological daughter of Robert and Diane Mitchell. I was not Anna's sister. I was someone else. And someone else's daughter, somewhere, was the woman who was supposed to be sitting at that Thanksgiving table. I want to explain what I did next, because the order of operations matters. I did not call my parents. Not yet. I did not call my sister. Not yet. I did one thing first, and that thing took 3 months and changed everything. I went looking for my biological family. I uploaded my raw DNA file to every public matching database I could find. GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, My Heritage. I built a list of every 4th cousin or closer DNA match the system flagged for me. Most of the names meant nothing, but the 3rd name on the list of my close matches, second cousin, predicted, with 3.8% shared DNA, was a woman named Maya Tanaka. She was 26 years old. She lived in San Jose. She had taken her DNA test 18 months earlier, looking for relatives in her father's family who had been scattered after World War II. Her profile photo showed a woman who looked like me. Not exactly like me, but the shape of the nose, the line of the jaw, the exact same brown eyes. I messaged her through the platform. I did not say who I was or what I had found. I said only that I was a possible relative and that I wanted to ask some questions about her family history. She wrote back within 4 hours. We did a phone call 3 days later. Maya told me about her family. Her father was named David Tanaka. He was 63 years old. He lived in Davis, California, 20 minutes outside Sacramento. He had been born in Japan but had moved to the United States at 6 years old. He was an architect. He had married a woman named Lily, born Lily Park, of Korean descent. They had 4 children. Maya was the youngest. The eldest was a woman named May Tanaka. May was 32 years old. She lived in San Francisco, 20 minutes from my apartment. She worked at a museum. May had been born. And Maya said this so casually I almost missed it, at St. Margaret's Hospital in Sacramento, on a Tuesday morning in October of 1993. I was born at St. Margaret's Hospital in Sacramento on a Tuesday morning in October of 1993. I sat in my kitchen and I asked Maya very carefully, "Do you know what time your sister May was born?" Maya thought for a moment. She said, I think Mom said it was around 4 a.m. Why? I was born at 4:17 a.m. Two girls, same hospital, same morning, same hour. I told Maya I would call her back. I sat with the information for a week. I needed to know before I told her, before I told my parents, before I told anyone, whether what I suspected was an accident or whether it was something darker. So I drove to Sacramento. I went to St. Margaret's Hospital. I asked for medical records from October 1993. They could not, for very specific privacy reasons, release them to me. So I hired an attorney. Her name was Patricia Harlan. She was the kind of attorney who had spent 20 years suing hospitals for medical errors. Patricia subpoenaed the records. 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday in March, she called me into her office. She had a folder in front of her. She said, Chloe, before I show you what's in this folder, I need you to sit down. And I need you to understand that what I am about to tell you is not just a story about a mistake, it is a story about a cover up. Moreover, I sat down. She opened the folder. The records showed the following. On a Tuesday morning in October of 1993, two baby girls were born within 41 minutes of each other in adjoining delivery rooms at St. Margaret's Hospital. Baby A was born at 4:17 a.m. to Diane Mitchell in delivery room 3. Baby B was born at 4:58 a.m. to Lily Tanaka in delivery room 4. Both babies were transferred to the nursery where their identification bracelets were affixed by a nurse on the overnight shift. The nurse's name, and Patricia paused before she said it, was Helen Vance. Helen Vance was 56 years old at the time. She had been a labor and delivery nurse at St. Margaret's for 11 years. She had a reputation as competent but distracted. She had been written up twice in the previous 5 years for procedural errors. On the morning of the births, Helen Vance was working the end of a 13-hour shift. By the standards of nursing practice at the time, she should not have been the person affixing identification bracelets to newborns. But she was, and she made a mistake. What we know from a document Patricia pulled out of the folder, and which I want you to understand was sitting in a closed file at St. Margaret's Hospital for 32 years before anyone outside the hospital saw it, is that Helen Vance discovered her mistake the very next morning. She had typed up a one-page incident report at 7:45 a.m. on the day after the births. The report stated in clear and unambiguous language, possible identification bracelet error involving baby A, Mitchell, and baby B, Tanaka, affixed during my shift the previous evening. Both bracelets show evidence of having been removed and reattached. Recommend immediate verification of maternal-infant matching prior to discharge. She had submitted that report to her supervising physician. The supervising physician on duty that morning was a man named Dr. Howard Banner. Dr. Banner did not order the verification. He did not contact the families. He did not inform his own administration. He took Helen Vance's incident report and he placed it in a folder marked to be filed in his office. That folder was never reviewed. The babies went home with the wrong families. I went home with Robert and Diane Mitchell. May Tanaka went home with David and Lily Tanaka. Both families raised the children they were given for 32 years. Patricia looked at me across the desk. She said, Chloe, Helen Vance is 78 years old and lives in a retirement community in Bakersfield. She is alive. She is reachable. Dr. Howard Banner is 86 years old, retired, and lives in La Jolla. He is also alive. I asked Patricia one question. I said, Did the hospital know? She said, That report was discovered in an internal audit in 2014. The hospital's then chief of risk management, a woman named Patricia Yost, no relation to me, reviewed it. She wrote a memo recommending the hospital contact the affected families. That memo was overruled by hospital legal counsel, who advised that the statute of limitations had passed and that disclosure would expose the hospital to litigation. The hospital chose not to contact you, or the Tanakas. They have known for 11 years. I sat in that office for a long time. I did not cry. I did not yell. I just asked Patricia what she needed from me to start the lawsuit. She told me. I gave it to her. I left her office at 4:30 in the afternoon. I drove to my parents' house in Sacramento. I did not call ahead. My mother answered the door. She was 64 years old. She had been retired for 2 years. She was wearing the apron with the small embroidered daisies that she had owned for as long as I had been alive. She saw my face. She said, Chloe, what's wrong? I asked her where Dad was. He was in the garage. I asked her to call him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same kitchen table where 8 months earlier Anna and I had spit into little plastic tubes, and I told them. I started with the DNA test. I told them the results. I told them I had spent 6 months confirming and reconfirming. I told them about the Tanakas. I told them about Helen Vance. I told them about Dr. Howard Banner. And I told them, when I got to the part about the cover up, that I was suing the hospital and that I was going to recover whatever legal and emotional compensation was possible for both families. My mother, who had been a nurse for 36 years, buried her face in her hands at the word cover up. My father did not say anything for almost 5 minutes. He looked at his coffee cup. Then he stood up. He walked across the kitchen. He put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, "Chloe, you are my daughter. I do not need DNA to tell me that. The hospital does not get to take you away from us. Do you understand me?" I started crying. He did not let go of my shoulders. I cried for about 10 minutes. When I stopped, my mother, still at the table, looked up at me and she said, very quietly, "What about May?" That was the moment that broke my heart the most. Because my mother, the woman who had raised me, who was sitting across the kitchen from me in her daisy apron, was already thinking about the daughter she should have raised. The little girl whose first words she had missed, whose graduations she had missed, whose wedding she had missed, whose entire childhood had been spent in a house in Davis, California, with people she did not know, learning to speak Japanese as a second language, growing up in a family she would not have recognized in a photograph. I told my mother that May was alive, that she was 32, that she lived in San Francisco, that she worked at a museum, that I had not yet contacted her, that I had wanted to talk to my parents first. My mother stood up from the table. She walked over to me. She put her arms around me. She said, "Chloe Bean, you are our daughter, and our other daughter is somewhere, and both of those things can be true at the same time. Tomorrow, we figure out how to find her." I called Maya Tanaka the next morning. I told her everything. She listened for 20 minutes in complete silence. When I was done, she said, "I'm going to have to talk to my parents and my sister. I'll call you back." She called me back 48 hours later. She told me that her parents, David and Lily Tanaka, wanted to meet me. She also told me that her sister May, who at 32 was discovering this exact same fact about her own life on the exact same Sunday, wanted to meet me too. We arranged a meeting 2 weeks later at a hotel in downtown San Francisco. Neutral ground. I walked into that hotel meeting room on a Saturday morning in April. I saw my biological parents for the first time in my life. I saw my biological sisters, May, Maya, and a younger one named Hannah, for the first time. And I saw, across the room, a woman my exact age, who had my mother's blue eyes and my father's wave in her hair and my sister Anna's exact crinkle around the eyes when she smiled. May Tanaka, the daughter Diane and Robert Mitchell should have brought home. We did not speak for a long time. We just looked at each other. She walked across the room. I walked across the room. We hugged for 40 seconds. Neither of us said anything. When we finally pulled apart, she said the first thing, "You're tall." I laughed. I said, "You're not." She laughed. And that was the moment. That was the moment when both of our lives, which had been quietly upside down for 32 years, finally turned the right way up. The civil case against St. Margaret's Hospital was the most extensively documented baby switching case in the history of California state law. Patricia Harlan, my attorney, filed in May. The Tanakas joined the case in June. The hospital tried, for the first 3 months, to settle quietly. We refused. We wanted accountability. We wanted documentation in the public record. We wanted what had happened to Helen Vance and Dr. Howard Banner to be on the front page of a newspaper. The case went to trial in March of the following year. It lasted 4 weeks. The hospital's internal cover-up memo, the one Patricia Yost had written in 2014, was entered into evidence on day 7. The audible gasp from the jury when that document was projected on the screen was caught in the court transcript. Helen Vance, 79 years old in a wheelchair, testified for 42 minutes. She apologized. She cried. She said she had told Dr. Banner that the families needed to be contacted, that he had told her to let it go, that she had been afraid of losing her job. Dr. Howard Banner, 87 years old, frail, retired, refused to testify on advice of his criminal defense attorney. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict came back at 4 in the afternoon on a Thursday. The hospital was ordered to pay $48 million in combined damages to the two families. The settlement is, as of this recording, the largest hospital misconduct settlement in California state history. Helen Vance had her nursing license revoked by the California Board of Registered Nursing in April of that year. She is permanently barred from medical practice. The state attorney general declined to pursue criminal charges due to her age, but the public hearing on her license was extensive and the records are publicly available. Dr. Howard Banner had his medical license revoked posthumously. He died of pneumonia 3 months before the verdict. He never had to look at us in the courtroom. The hospital fired its general counsel, replaced its chief of risk management, and reorganized its entire incident reporting system. They have not had a single newborn identification error since. $24 million, split between the families, was the financial outcome. I do not care about the money. I have not spent a dollar of mine outside of a few things I have funded specifically for the two families. I cared about the verdict. I cared about the public record. I cared about the fact that two families, mine and the Tanakas, finally had the truth they had been owed for 32 years. I want to tell you what destroyed us. It was not the DNA test. It was not the lawsuit. It was not Helen Vance or Dr. Banner or the hospital. What destroyed my family, and I use that word deliberately, was the truth. Because we cannot ever get back what was taken. My parents loved me. They still love me. They have not stopped being my parents. They show up at my apartment. They call me on Sunday mornings. My mother sent me a sweater last Christmas with a tag that read, "To Chloe Bean from Mom and Dad." But there is a small, quiet, permanent grief in our house now. My mother grieves the version of May she did not raise. The first steps she missed, the skinned knees, the first day of kindergarten that she sent some other child to. My father grieves the same things. Anna, my sister Anna, who is biologically their daughter, has been the most generous of all of us. She has embraced May. She has embraced the Tanakas. She is the one who insisted on inviting both families to her wedding last August. Both my mothers walked down the aisle. Both my fathers walked down the aisle. Two families of in-laws sat in the same pews. It was beautiful. It was also, I will be honest with you, heartbreaking, because we cannot undo what was done. We cannot give my parents the daughter they should have raised. We cannot give the Tanakas the daughter they should have raised. We cannot unlive 32 years. What we can do, and what we have done, is build something that did not exist before. May and I see each other every week. We text every day. She is, by every measure that matters, my sister. The Tanakas are my parents in a different but real way. The Mitchells are still my parents. Period. We are something new. We are not what we were, and we will never get that back. That is what the DNA test destroyed. Not love, not family, not relationship. It destroyed the illusion that our lives had always been the lives we were supposed to be living, and it forced all of us, at 32 years old, at 64, at 66, to build new ones, on top of the ruins of a story we had thought was finished. My name is Chloe Mitchell. I have two sets of parents. I have two sisters and three biological siblings. I have one childhood and four kinds of grief, and every single one of those things is, finally, the truth. If this story moved you, if you have ever taken a DNA test, or if you have ever wondered about the people who raised you, hit that subscribe button. We post a new story like this every single day. And tell me in the comments, would you want to know if you could find out? Would you take the test? I read every single comment. I'll see you tomorrow.